I don't think, traditional filmmaking is going to go away. You're going to see the, complete democratization of filmmaking and giving people more access that didn't have it before. Some people have not been through the sea change before. Did TV go away? No. Did films go away? No. Is the industry changing right now? Yes, absolutely. You have to have taste in order to be any sort of creative purveyor, right? In a pixel perfect world, I think taste is great, but I think idea is still gonna be king.
Welcome back to another episode of Makes You Wonder. If this is your first time here, welcome to Makes You Wonder. This is the show where we talk about the future of human creativity in the age of AI. And I'm Oskar. I am the co-founder of Wondercrafts, and I'm also the host of this project and experiment that we're doing to talk about the subject that we are so passionate about at Wondercraft. And joining us today, I have someone really, really cool, Gabe Michael. He is a director, producer, creator, storyteller, a true pioneer in the world of AI-driven storytelling and content production. He is today the vice president and executive producer of AI at Edelman, and at the real forefront of merging creativity with advanced technologies. So who better than Gabe to talk about this subject? Gabe has a really interesting journey that we're getting into and how he got started with film and storytelling. He did not think that he would have AI in his title when he got started. And he's not only created viral campaigns for Netflix, Sony, and Facebook Meta, but has also co-directed groundbreaking kind of shows like The Chef Experience, which was his first foray into AI, together with James Patterson, author James Patterson. And for me, a personal favorite from his body of work, How to Grow a Mustache with Nick Offerman. Gabe has true expertise in the whole art of filmmaking, from the intricate technical skill sets to actually directing, working with actors, and the whole gamut of storytelling in Hollywood and in the creator economy. He has earned a bunch of awards like Best Character and Best Art Direction in the Runway AI film competition. And beyond his work in the industry, he is also shaping the next generation of creatives as a lecturer at UCLA in LA, where he lives, and teaches on digital media production and the future, really, of interactive storytelling. Had a very fun conversation with Gabe, and I'm excited to bring you that whole thing now. So welcome to Makes You Wonder. This is Gabe Michael. Gabe Michael, welcome to Makes You Wonder.
Thank you for having me. Super excited you got.
Oh, I'm excited too. I'm very excited to get into it with you. Obviously, this is a show about human creativity in the age of AI, and who better to talk about that than you, given your fantastic career in filmmaking. And now you have AI in your title, so we're going to get into it all.
Yes.
First of all, did you ever expect to have AI in your title when you got started with filmmaking and storytelling?
Never, not once. I dreamed about making films about AI. I've always been towards technology, positive, but also, I love Black Mirror and showing the the potential downsides of it too. But yeah, no, never in my life would I have imagined that this is where we would be going.
And here you are now. So we're gonna kind of ease into this. So of course we want to talk about AI and where this is taking us. So we're Makes You Wonder is really a project in the making, as we are building our company Wondercraft, which is an AI-powered audio studio for storytellers, and we work with creatives and brands all over, and just trying to use AI for the good of getting more creative stories out there, and for creatives to build stories. And so Makes You Wonder just became a natural extension of that, because we ended up talking about AI and technology and creativity and the different ways you can bring that out into the world. And here we are now. So I'm excited to have you on. But first, I want to tell you something, because I've been doing research about your portfolio and your great body of work that you have behind you. I came across something that really stood out to me. So I have this weird thing that I've been doing since early 2000s. Every year I meet up with my friends in the fall, and we all are now scattered all over the world, right?
Yeah.
But we go back to Stockholm and we all show up in a mustache. And one part of that, it's just one of those things that we started in college and then became a kind of an annual ritual. It's just a way for friends to stay in touch, right? We don't see each other that often, but when we meet, it's like nothing ever happened. You know the idea. And one thing that we had always been circulating since it came out was your video that you have created with Nick Offerman about how to grow a mustache. So I feel a bit starstruck sitting here with you as the producer of that. Tell me, so I can go back to my friends after this. Was there anything about that shoot that stood out to you? Nick Offerman seems like a really cool guy. Anything that you remember from that?
Yes, I mean, he fit in our shoot between things that he was really getting paid for. He was just short, obviously for a good cause, but he was great, and we worked with him twice on it. He is the man. I can't stress that enough. He's the man. He's such a good person, first and foremost, but just like was willing to do whatever we asked of him. Had so much creative ideas, and it just brought like levity to the set that just made it such a really great. We had good creative behind it. But he just brought just so much more. And, if you've seen the video, that he at one point makes a joke about taking a bite out of the onion. And that was his idea. He really wanted to do it. And so he did. He took a bite out of a onion a couple different times, like it was a full apple. So, the man commits and he gets it done.
It's amazing. Kind of confirming the story about him, I guess. He seems like an absolute guy. Yeah, really, really cool. Well, I'm happy you shared that. That's I think we're done with this shoot now. That's great. Now we can go back and move on. That's all we wanted.
You guys went back deep, yeah.
On to the next one. Listen, Gabe, you've had such a fascinating journey across film, interactive storytelling, and now AI. So we're going to get there. But where did you get started? Like, tell us a little bit about that. What initially sparked your interest in maybe storytelling or film? What was the earliest kind of inkling to getting started with your career?
Well, it goes back to high school. I was my dad owned a computer shop. This is before like Best Buys of the world and everything. You could just go buy box computers. You had to like get most of them, custom built. And I was the only one in my class that had a computer that was fast enough to do any sort of video editing. So when I used to play football and I was cutting together highlight reels for my for like scouts and things like that to try to get into college. I just was like, damn, I love this. Like, this is so fun, like editing these things together. And then everybody else found out that I had a fast computer, and so they brought all their projects to me to edit, and so I just learned editing that way. And I said, okay, well, this is absolutely just what I need to do to go forward. So I just went all in on that. Learning my storytelling better. I was always a little more technical focused than some of the other people, but I've kind of flipped around the other way a little bit where, I let the technology lead, let the storytelling lead where the technology goes. So I've kind of come full circle on that. But it was a fun experience to get going.
Do you think is that a natural progression? Like you learning the trade and how to edit and how to, back then, those early days, digital cameras, I guess, and now you're more on the creator and writer side.
Cams and super great. And then we went to, everything went to DV, digital video, and we were just, we didn't care about the quality of it. When this was pre-YouTube, right? So I like to just think of like what it could have been if we had YouTube as a distribution outlet when we were doing it in those high school and junior high or junior college years. But it was it's learning storytelling has been it's evolved into everything else in my life. And I just kind of was just like, okay, the editing part I got pretty easy, technical, but I was like, I just want to get better and better and better at creative and storytelling. And so I'd want to go and be like, go to people, sets. I did luckily I grew up in Southern California, so I'd had opportunities to go to, behind the scenes of like Dodger games and work with the crew there. work on music videos and things like that. And I saw like what side of the business I like and what side I don't. And I went for a while and I was line producing, which if you're familiar, it's you're doing the day to day line producing or unit production manager. And that was mainly because at my level there wasn't anybody. I didn't go to a set that was organized, and I just was like, I can't take this. Like I said, I need, like, there's no room to be creative here. So I'd organize those people, and I kind of jumped in to that for a while.
So what was when you started out? I mean, and then you got into school a little later, I'm assuming. What was the career goal they had in mind then when you got started? Did you have that in mind?
Yeah, I think directing. I think everybody wanted to initially go towards directing, or what you think your idea of directing is. And that, I went to film school, the traditional film school for undergrad. And then I took a few years off and was a paid line producer for advertising for a couple of years. And then the strikes hit in 2008. And so I decided to go back to grad school at UCLA, which I'm now a teacher in the same program, or a professor in the same program I was a part of back, over 10 years ago. And it was there that I kind of discovered, I was like, oh, I don't know if I believe in the industry is the way that it is, or the way that they're telling me. I'm seeing all the growth on YouTube and on the digital side, social side, and I just want to follow that path. So I went, and after grad school, I went and worked at Maker Studios. They're not around anymore because they sold to Disney for
that's right,
$1 billion. I didn't get a dime of that, so don't ask me. Yeah. Yeah, but it was great. I worked on Epic Rap Battles of History, which was another really early internet hit. I mean, those guys are awesome. Lloyd and Pete are just like two of the most creative and nicest guys I've ever worked with. But from when I was there, the company was still pretty young. Then I started to get scouted by other companies and worked at a company called Break Media, which then later renamed to Defy Media, which is where I produced that and directed the mustache video that we were talking about earlier.
Maker Studio. I mean, that was a huge deal back in the day, and it was an eye opener, right? Because I think that was one of the earlier deals where this, for lack of a better word, maybe the off-Broadway or hobbyists was really coming out of the YouTube era that's been bubbling for a few years. That was a huge deal.
It was still before the creator economy was
right.
Coined, right? Like, and that's what we were building early on. A lot of business models that didn't work came from it. But we were very early, and we knew that the power that this could be, which ended up being the power of social and everybody's self-distribution across social channels.
It's interesting also, you said something about in school it was kind of the traditional path, and you kind of saw something else. Do you feel like that discussion still exists, meaning there's this traditional path of you're a director in Hollywood, you work with the big studios, you have big funding behind you for big projects, while Mr. Beast goes off and does his thing, right? And these YouTubers go off and do, I don't know, what do you want to call that, really? This new school kind of creator economy way of creating stories with not so many red cameras, but more so iPhones and shooting with what they have, but really creating compelling stories. Do you think is that still, what's the state of that today, you think? Is that still a thing, or?
I mean, we're actually having that discussion tonight in the course at UCLA that I teach, is what is the future of media? Where are we headed? Because, I think that there is that traditional path for like 5 people. I think that there will be, still drive time radio still exists, right? Like, I think that things will exist. What is the new form of entertainment that will come out of all this? I am actually trying to think of like, what are we going to be in a post-social world? In the form that it is anyway, right? Where social media is always gonna be a part of our life. People are sick of it, right? Like, we're overwhelmed. We get so much content. There's no lack of supply for content, right? So what does that mean for advertising? What does that mean for any sort of creative endeavor? And then how do people live in that ecosystem? How do you be a creator in that? And that's I don't have all the answers for that. I have a small point of view, but I mean, I think that we are and I think AI plays a lot into the next phase of where we're going to head.
Kind of jumping into the gun here a little bit on that conversation, because I obsess about this idea too. If you look at the future of, I always say this, like I was always taught in my upbringing, I'm sure you can relate to this. Like ideas are cheap. It's about the execution, how you tell stories and everything, right?
But now it's the opposite.
Right. That's like, and where does that leave us? And I always end up with big fan of like Rick Rubin. He's about taste, right? Taste is going to be it's going to be the most sought after skill in a world where content is at an abundance. What does that really mean, and how do you get that? How do you get taste? What is the path forward for that? I find this endlessly fascinating, obviously.
Well, I think that the taste argument is super valid. You have to have taste in order to be any sort of creative purveyor, right? Director or whatever it ends up being. You have to know what's a good idea and what's not a good idea. You have to know, especially working with AI, or just even traditional video. If you're editing something or you're looking at an edit that somebody else did, you have to know what you like and what you don't like. I've worked with directors that have no taste or super bad taste, and it comes out pretty bad usually. The outcome. So that's always something I've personally prided myself on, is having that good taste. And you have to bring that to your projects, client projects or even personal projects, to up to a point. So I think that will be a big factor in what you put out. But not everybody has that, right? But sometimes, especially in the social world, the idea is so good, like we said, and people can look past some of the flaws of it. So in a pixel perfect world, I think taste is great, but I think idea is still gonna be king.
That's interesting. I like that. I like that a lot.
Which is why you can watch something, it'll be just as fun if it was shot on an iPhone versus a Red, right? If it's done the right way. But it depends on what the medium is, right, and what the expectations are for that medium.
Yeah, because that plays a big role, right? I mean, just in the content marketing we do for our team, because every company can't just be a brand today. You have to be a media company. You have to produce content and stories. But it's a very different in how you
media company needs to be a brand.
Yeah, that's right.
That's kind of where I'm headed is, it's it makes sense looking the other way, right? It makes sense of okay, a brand, they have creative teams, they have infrastructure to do this, but what is the opposite, right? What do creators become in the new world, right? We all have to, ad revenue can only take you so far. Traditional distribution methods are just, for independent film are just non-existent, or your price point of your production has to be so low that it doesn't financially make sense to bring on, a big star actor to do your project. So what is the brand that you're building, right? Whether it's a personal brand, or what else are you selling? What are those other opportunities? So I don't have the answer for that or where it's going, but I like to think of the music industry. They've survived for the most part. People are still making music. Suno and Udio are gonna upend that as well. Although it's very hard to make a good song using one of those, unless you already know song structure and how to write, right? And I think that type of thing is going to be more prevalent. Is okay, these things are so easy to get done, but the people that know how to do the thing, or at least have, whether it's taste or know what makes a song good, or knows what makes a film good, they're going to be the ones that their work shines through. But then it becomes platform. Do you have the platform in order to share the idea? So it's a lot of how much work. I would love to only focus on creating films all day long. That'd be great for me. Is that the reality? No, because you have to put out tutorials. You have to put out thought leadership. You have to do your regular job. In order to survive. But then you have to think of it. Okay, well, on my artist side, I like to do these things, and they help and they showcase you. But what does that lead towards? Another job? Does it lead towards buying the standard thing is buying courses, things like that? Then I think it really it's a very nuanced answer.
It's interesting though, and just what you said there, like, boo, boring. I have to do work too. Just want to do my art.
Right.
How do you balance that? Like the duality of like business and creativity. Right? How do you balance storytelling, creative storytelling, with the goals and needs of big brands that you work with, or platforms that you work with in the past?
Everything's different. Every project has a totally different set of rules for it, because that's set by brands, that's set by stakeholders in the organizations. It's that, there's just so many factors to it. So just trying to cut through what that is knowing what the job is part of the battle of thinking, okay, this is not going to be where the sword that I'm going to die on. This isn't, or that I'm going to fall on. This is not the hill I'm going to die on. Like for this project, like, okay, this is a paid thing versus, a personal project. And then just knowing, like, when people hire you to do something, you're not doing it for you. You're doing it for them, and you're doing it in service of them. And I'm very much a proponent of that, and just keeping that in mind. You have to bring your best taste step forward. You have to bring your best, creative forward, but you are kind of set within the limitations that are given to you, which, sometimes I think limitations, bring some of the best creative outputs.
I mean, you work with brands like Netflix, Sony, Meta. These are massive companies, obviously, and created some incredible content. What is the secret sauce to crafting a story that resonates with audiences on such massive scale? Has that changed over time? If you look back in your career, what used to work, is it still working?
I mean, it changed, especially working with things that are social focused. It changes daily, right? I think when YouTube was first coming, into popularity and working with creators, we were selling things like the Nick Offerman thing. That was more of that wasn't a sales job. That was a goodwill with working with Movember. But like that, those were things that brands usually pay us to do, big creative ask. But then a lot of people brought those things in house. Those, the Wireds of the world, the Condé Nast, they had their own studios, and so then they had their own sales teams. And I think these things are still, good ideas and good, I guess, creative outputs, right? But it really depends on what the end goal is, right? And then how much the audience have seen these things. Like, we used to do pranks for good, things like that, and then that market everybody started doing it, and so that's why, like, in advertising specifically, and now content creation and advertising go hand in hand, because you're both like a marketer, but you're also a content creator. Sometimes you do it for your channel, sometimes you do it for the brand's channel. So it really depends on what the creative is. But I've seen a push towards, I used to do a lot of like the big tentpole creation, big spectacles, things like that, shows, digital shows that were completely funded or underwritten by a brand. And I still see that there's a room for that. But now brands own a lot of their things. They're not going out to other publishers, right? So PR is still a big, portion of this. But then you have to look at how social platforms consume content, right? It used to be, you created something that was a big newsworthy piece, or some sort of skeptical that people would write about, and put your video within there, embed it on there, and that's how YouTube got views, was just from other websites coming in. But YouTube doesn't like that anymore. They want it all in house. Facebook's the same. They want the video owned on their platform. They don't want it hosted somewhere else. So that changes the PR industry. That changes how distribution works. And so a lot of these platforms are now making the discoverability a lot easier, because TikTok is doing that, right? TikTok gives away views essentially. And so YouTube has followed, Meta has followed in their way their algorithms work. And I think that's changing like consumer behavior. So, I think, and if you look at the way that influencer marketing is working as well, it's a lot smaller based. They don't want to spend the millions of dollars on Mr. Beast, because he's got, a very specific audience abroad. They want a lot of niche based creators. So for someone like, I don't ever consider myself that type of creator, but I get hit up for brand deals and things like that every once in a while to go on my channels. I just mostly do it for education, because I want to elevate the AI space. I see that the power in that small, the mid-sized creator is where things are headed, if not already are.
I find that interesting, and I think that has been, that's the big tech enabler there too, right? Or there are firms that are making these kind of mid-level creators available in a bigger way. So the market has really evolved in that, because it used to be that you can only really get a hold of you go for the biggest creator. This is very prevalent in podcasting, by the way, where all the big creators are really the only ones making serious money and getting those bigger deals. When you're trying to like create an infrastructure for smaller creators and create this kind of army of creatives that can take that out. And now you have big agencies spinning out of that. I actually had the chief creative officer from Whaler on the show a couple of months ago, which is super fascinating. And they're all about the creator first storytelling, right? And working with brands to kind of give up a bit of control and to get new expressions from not only big creators, but a whole army of smaller ones that can tell stories to their audiences with authenticity and some pizzazz, and really make that happen. So let's dive into a little bit of the AI, right? We already established you have AI in your title. What was your first encounter with generative AI? Or AI is a very broad term these days, and I kind of hate it in many ways, because it's like saying digital media, right? It's becoming starting to lose its.
Somebody hit me up the other day and said, "Can you do a new media project for me?" I was like, "What is this new media? I want to know what it is."
The hologram. That's something cool. Something
exactly.
Yeah.
So my first encounter with it was in 2018, and it wasn't generative AI, but it was using chatbots. And I did it on a project with Meta, Facebook at the time, and and James Patterson. First Avenue Machine was the production company that I was working with. And James Patterson is the novel writer that you're probably seen.
Is it the Chef Experience?
Yep, the Chef Experience.
Awesome.
And through that, we used this was to launch Facebook Messenger, or just to show like what its capabilities were. And we used a lot of chatbot technology, which is really it falls under AI. And we went out and we shot a ton of assets over in New Orleans over the course of a week or two, basically to tell this story. So like little vignettes, but for things that could be real. CCTV cameras, ring doorbells, found footage from people's cell phones of this like terrorist attack that supposedly happened in New Orleans. And we were able to get so much production value out of like a very small time frame, because it was, most of the book was told as if the main character was writing to you or messaging you on Facebook Messenger, and then you could go and recall things. So we're like basically creating a video game that had like intuitive technology into it. I was like, damn, this is awesome. The project was awesome to begin with, but then when you go through it and then you're in the process of like seeing it work and function, you're like, man, this could be, I don't know what the practical applications of that are in the future. And it was such a big project that not everybody can do it. But it's like that capability was there. So that's how I kind of cut my teeth on it.
I mean, it's a pretty cool first experience.
Yeah.
To be fair. So let's talk about it. Like AI we're kind of still in a bit of a hype cycle, I'd say, although I do feel like we're moving past that and looking more at application, and it's died down a little bit. There's other stuff to talk about in media, but there's still a lot of buzz around, stirring up quite a lot of fears around job displacement and questions about authenticity and in telling stories and how AI will affect us all. But according to you're a filmmaker, what is the state of AI in filmmaking in the creative space, I guess, today?
Well, I think that there's two separate paths for it. There's AI as like a tool set, as far as like you're using it for visual effects, you're using it to fill very specific needs of your pipeline. Small little things like that would in the past we would have called plugins that nobody would garner no attention through the press or anything like that. But then you see like the generative side, you see what we're able to do on the image side as well, and then how we pull these together to tell stories. So I think it'll be a mix. Like I don't think traditional filmmaking is going to go away. I think it'll all be enhanced by AI, whether it's small little tools and things like that. But then you're going to see the complete democratization of filmmaking and giving people more access that didn't have it before, right? Like, we used to say that DSLR was I know how to say this word, democratization of filmmaking, because anybody could go out there and have a 4K, camera, which led to YouTube and being like a premium experience, right? Anybody can do that now. You can go there for $1,000 or even on your phone and still have like a really great looking, maybe you're not going to be the next Roger Deakins, but you're still going to look good. And I think that we're going towards that with AI, and that's going to be even cheaper, right? Like, people complain about the sticker price of all the AI tools they have to do, but it's still under $1,000, right? So like, you're still like under the price of an iPhone would still be able to create, if you're talented enough and if you have the drive to, full film if you wanted to. There's lots of tips and tricks and workarounds right now that we would need to do, but I think that that's possible. So, I don't know if it's going to completely take over, Hollywood, like everything, CGI hasn't completely taken over Hollywood. There's still films that are made, the way that films used to be made, but also people didn't want CG. They didn't want Toy Story, right? They didn't want full CGI movies created by computers. And this is just a new form of that, in my opinion, anyway. It's CGI, but we call it AI filmmaking, right? And it's done with a much different pipeline and a much different workflow than you would with CG. And it's still developing, right? With depending on what this technology is. So we can build out a pipeline or a workflow this month of what it looks like. Next month, it may be different depending on what the newest and latest feature is. So it's really hard for, people have asked me to make classes and things like that. And I just don't, because it's like it'll age itself really quickly. I think we'll hit a point where it's like we have a defined pipeline, or, at least a way to do things a little bit more professionally. I don't think that we're at that point yet, but I think that we'll get there very soon.
I mean, it's evolved quite quickly, right? Specifically in the film space. I mean, we work in audio, and that is changed. I mean, we have been around for around a year, and just about that, we're at a point now where voice is just 100% studio quality, and you're able to, with our model, we manipulate it sounds. We could bring out the emotions and the accents and speak like you have food in your mouth, and it's great. But image and video, obviously, they're more complex in so many ways, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the combination of image and video, right, or image and audio, right, and they have to work in sync to one another. But there's so much more. Are you going to do motion capture to make this person seem real? Or are you gonna choose to just do text to audio or image to video? Like, it just becomes the choice, I guess, the aesthetic choice that you would do, across in any project. So, I don't know, what the main tool is going to be of the future, but I don't think it's going to be one main tool. I think it's going to be better workflows, but with many different tools, many different models that specifying different things, like, plugins.
Yeah.
And I don't think that, after a while, the general audience isn't going to care. There may be something lost, with that human connection, but, we've already done it. I can't tell you the way that, Hollywood is going. We've already kind of done this with the Netflix of the world, and just with the way that we've kind of just overproduced so many different, types of product, and we've overpaid for them. I think there's just like so many high budget things that just aren't, the finances aren't, equaling out. So I think that, this could be a very good solution to produce a lot more different types of content, spin-offs, things like that. But also it's just a new form of animation.
I like the comparison with CGI, and when that was a big thing. I mean, there were definitely voices in Hollywood and a big debate around what that would bring. But looking back historically, it just gave birth to a whole new sector of jobs, right? Being 3D artists, and I've been in some of those studios, and those people are just incredible artists. How they can make things happen. I remember back in the 90s when this was a thing. right now AI is way more accessible to the everyday person, right? Anyone out there can kind of pick it up and throw a couple of bucks at it and start playing around with it. But back then, you could pirate, a 3D Studio Max copy, but you still have to be a real artist to make anything of. It was very hard. How do you view AI and talent? I mean, you talked about taste before. What goes into AI today to make it really good?
I mean, I think we talked. A lot of it is taste, right? Your shot choice, things like that, like whatever
Right.
tool that you're going to use. But I don't.
But is it then translating that taste into a text prompt, for instance, or being able to articulate what taste is?
That's just that's the paper to the pen, the paper to the pencil, right? Like that's the getting the job done part of it. And to me, that's the means to the end. I'm not the best, even though I do a lot of work, I'm not the best prompter that can break it down. But I'll tell you what, when I go, I can find out what that prompt is by testing, right? By doing things. So it's like having enough credits and being able to do that, you're able to experiment with it. And sometimes I just get so frustrated, like, damn, I could have, instead of spending this day trying to get this one shot, I could have gone out and filmed this, right? Now we're going to get to the point where AI is like skidding motion capture. So you do go out but that leads to a 1 or 2 person crew, right? A microphone on somebody, but you don't even need great audio because you can clean it up later, or you can skin a voice, right? So I think it brings lots of opportunities of change in the same way that, there's a difference between like a TV crew, a film crew, and then a YouTube crew, right? I've worked with a lot of the top creators, some that have extremely large budgets for, their individual videos or series that they're creating. Some have very little budgets. So you kind of like scale up and job lines cross from the traditional path, people that can do 2 or 3 things. And I think that that's the way that we're going with this is, people that have multiple skills do better. So like me working with, I produce a lot, or I produced a lot for YouTube, but I also had to sit down and edit. I had to go back to my roots. I directed a lot. I knew how to, do some sort of sound design. And I've been touching up on that now. So we're talking about like 5 or 6, old jobs, right? That used to be there, or positions. And now you have one person doing that. And that was before AI, and that's what a lot of the creators are doing. So like we've already set the stage for it. So the call that AI is doing all this is just total BS, because it's already been here. And we all, like, everybody has the opportunity to learn all these things. All the information that you need is out on YouTube, right? But I think it's going to become more like novel writing, in a sense, where you're the creator, you're the artist, and you're doing a lot of the work by yourself. You're editing, and because for my process anyway, you're storyboarding, shooting, and editing all at the same time. So if this was, if I had some sort of, even like a small budget behind a project that I was doing, I would definitely go get somebody that's better at sound design than me and do it. But I just can't separate the two like in a traditional path, because there is so much unknown with the generations and things like that.
So you're becoming a one-man band in many ways. Like you are,
for my personal projects anyway. but that's what the opportunity is. And do I think that we can build out pipelines and things like that and do that at scale? Absolutely. That's what I'm doing more on the professional side. Yeah, I mean, I think that gives, more opportunity for that kind of solo artist. And then when you look at, the actor side of this, there will be a lot more motion capture with people. So I could go and try to do it myself, or I could hire an actor and they could play almost every part in the film, right? Like it could be their vehicle, and that could be the partnership, is the filmmaker and the actor. And it's like, how, if somebody wanted to do that, or you bring on, a small set of people, right? Like they would in animation, like they do multiple voices, right, across of a film, or a TV show, like Simpsons, some of the guys do, 5 or 6 different voices. Same thing here. Like you play 5 or 6 different characters, across the series, and you're showing up and your workday's short because you don't have to relight. You shoot, the scene in a couple different angles. And then you're not waiting, you're just shooting on like a white site background or a green screen. And you don't even need the green screen because you're just capturing motion, and the audio. And so like I just think that there's just so much more opportunity that's going to come from this. But with any technological change, the positions change as well. So it's like when you talk about a specific job, one specific job may go away or may change or may morph into two, but new jobs will arise and use some of those same skill sets. So that's what people will have to look for is how to do that and how to combine skills and how to look and go to that next level.
It's interesting. We're starting to work a little bit more in the film industry as well for just because my brother is in film as well. He's an editor, and started using Wondercraft for ADRs, and you know how much it's inevitable when you start to realize some sort of shortcuts that you can do without, you know, having go through getting all the actors back into the studios and doing those ADRs, which is takes a lot of time in the post-production. And just changing a word, or hey, I need all of a sudden I'm in post and I need a German guy to start shouting at the end of that, you know, on the other side of the room over there. Let's just make that happen. So I see what you're making. You can kind of have these live creation that isn't sequential storyboard shooting and editing. You're kind of doing it all at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that'll be more like a creative process for the more traditional scripted content, you know, things that aren't like a commercial that have to, you know, have already been like you have to do the process exactly like you storyboarded it, exactly how you already pitched it. But I think that those, you know, we're also kind of going away from those types of advertising and marketing campaigns too. So, yeah, I mean, I'd love to say definitively, but that's at least the direction the North Star that I'm headed in right now, or think that we're going. And I think that we have, you know, the opportunity to like. There's so much doom and gloom around this, and I understand why, because people don't only understand the technology, but like some people have not been through the sea change before, and I've luckily been through it in the middle of it with a lot of things shifting to YouTube and digital. But did TV go away? No. Did films go away? No. Is the industry changing right now? Yes, absolutely. It's changing. And I think that's going to be, you know, the next phase of this. So I can't wait until the hype cycle is over, so that we don't have everything on a magnifying lens that we do. But I just think it is so fascinating. I think even to people that have nothing to do with the creative field, to see what is possible, you know, with some of the, the voice technology is just like you can change your voice to anything. You can clean up audio, and that may not be as sexy to some people, but for us that work in the industry, you're like, damn, that's really, really cool. But when you see something visual, you see me turned into like a puppet character, and I've been mimicking my every move. That's kind of cool. You know, I think one of the biggest things that I did that went viral was just like the singing head of a marble statue. And it's just to show, you know, off this new tech. And it wasn't even my video. I was just like, took it from their website. I'm like, look, I'm sharing their thing. I did not create this, everybody. But everybody just thought it was so cool. But it was their first kind of, lip sync tech that anybody had seen. So I'm super excited the way it's going to go. I'm very, very bullish on the technology, obviously. But it's going to come to a point where we have to start delivering on these and on the promise of it. And does that mean like the tech is only good for pulling in, something that would replace stock footage, or B-roll or things like that? For a major studio, maybe that's it. But I'm seeing what's on the table and seeing the possibilities. I don't think that that's it. I think that it's going to be much more than that.
And I think we have an insatiable demand for content, so I think we're all good there. And in the aspect of the TV died, no, TV is around. It's just morphing into new channels, right? And I think that's going to keep evolving into so many different niche channels and new forms.
Exactly. We're going to need to be more on more places, right? Like you have to put it up, but in more places. So
Yeah, one aspect that because I love video games as well, in how that is kind of evolving and getting throughout the years, getting closer to film storytelling, and how those worlds will emerge eventually as well, be able to play out, film stories and that kind of storytelling will merge with a more interactive experience. So, and I don't think we've really scratched the surface of that really happening at scale. But the gaming industry is like twice the size of the movie industry. But I think those will kind of, give birth to new formats over time as technology becomes more accessible for people as well, for VR or immersive experiences to be able to step into movies and be able to even interact with them. I don't know. I like the idea of that.
Live in a universe, right? Like I've seen the Doom recreation, right? Like they fed a model every screenshot of Doom, and it just replicated it in real time. And I know that Netflix gaming is looking for that, or looking into that, or pretty highly invested into that. And many other companies are coming out with these things too that just generate the world as you kind of go through it. And I feel like that is a big form. I think that some people have thought, and I think they're right, like everything will just be generated what you want, but I think people have a hard time figuring out what they want a lot of times. So I don't know if that's, I don't know, is Suno or Udio or any other music, is that going to replace you wanting to listen to a famous song? No. But is it fun to play around with and create something novel? Sure. Are some people going to use it to create great songs? Yeah, they are. Or forms of it to reskin it or whatever. But yeah, I don't think that it's going to be as doom and gloom as people have projected.
I agree with you. At least we can hope so and try to do our part to make it so. But I think like in terms of gaming, I think I talked to a friend of mine who's an actor the other day who is very positive about the future of his work, even though it's hard to be an actor in any age of time really. But the idea of, speaking of gaming, so I think you've probably seen the NVIDIA example of these NPCs, these non-playable characters that now can live in these endless world games that can be full characters, and they have a backstory. They are really programmed to have a characteristic in a persona, and you can talk to them endlessly, right? They're like your chatbot that you did with the chef experience, but they are actually acting out. I mean, those kind of things will emerge and have so many different takes on it as well. And you need, I think there's so much room to think about, new ways of new jobs emerging in that space and many aspects of it.
Also makes you think about your own reality a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was what the next thing. I think when we're old, Gabe, we're just going to plug in and be in whatever world we want, I guess.
That's right.
I think this is why people like vinyl. You need some sort of countermeasure to
something tactile.
Something tactile to play around with. So, I mean, one huge cool thing about your career is obviously you are now, as we established in the beginning here, kind of come full circle. You're now with a master teacher and lecturer at UCLA. What do you find most rewarding about teaching, the trade of storytelling and film to the next generation of creatives? And what has surprised you the most about that experience?
Well, my students surprised me, and my executive job, I teach all day. I show people how to use the tool. So for me, this is like an amazing scenario where I get to use the tools and play with them. But in a very practical way of figuring out how to, teach others how to do it and what these use cases are. Just kind of like the sum of my experiences have come to head right now. And it's just a great place to be. My students continue, especially at UCLA, continue to surprise me. They are so smart, and that part doesn't surprise me. But their knowledge of the industry and just like the knowing where things are going and asking all the right questions, especially like what to do with their life or their career going forward. Obviously, the AI debate has has brought up a lot of questions and letting them rethink, what their path forward is going to be. But it's also doing that to all of us. So, that works in any sort of creative industry. But it's just so much. I guess it's very fulfilling in order to just see somebody that is at the beginning stages of their journey, as far as like with work, on the not on the creative journey, because a lot of them are super talented, but at the beginning of their professional journey, or going back to that after taking a break for their master's program. So some of these people I keep up with years after. I've worked with some of them from former classes. I brought them on. Some of them have hired me to do things as well. So it's just an awesome like full circle experience, and being part of that program that I came out of, the producers program. It's such a small community of people. There's like 10 to 15 people per year in that class. So it's very, very small. So we're able to do a lot in every session, and I'm thankful for the experience, because it's let me think about media in a new way, because I have to then I owe it to them to think critically about it. But then they bring a lot to the table on their end as well.
Yeah, that's nice. I guess teaching is always said to be a great introspective as well. Like you learn about yourself when you're teaching someone how to do things.
Exactly. There's a great Stoic quote about it: is men learn as they teach.
Right.
And
there you go.
That's what I love.
Is there any specific creator or filmmaker that you look up to, that you've maybe taught or out there that you're specifically excited about today?
I mean, I'm a product of the 80s
Yeah.
and 90s. Love me some Spielberg. I like to look at everything. I'm just inspired by what is the creative possible. Right. What we can do. So I'm inspired by like a lot of different things. And I hate to say that it's not just film and filmmakers, but I'm inspired by a lot of different things, a lot of different books, a lot of different social channels, different types of format. So to me, it's more like, how to tell a story. And I always love I don't want to say just the wrong way. I always love the box, right? Like I love not being, having to not think outside the box, but like within constraints, what can you do, right? What is that possible? And I feel like we're in that now, and we have to think that way, because you're thinking through how do I could have done the chef experience as a narrative film, but we still told a story, and we did it across like 50 assets, or maybe it was like 150 assets, something like that. And it's like, to me, like that is the big challenge. But that is like the creative spark is how do we do this and how do we tell this? So, I visually, I really like the neo-noir type stuff. I love the 80s look. Just that, the anamorphic 35 millimeter look. It's perfection. It's like, that was peak Hollywood to me. So, I'll bring in different styles and different references for, each individual project. So it's just, and now you can do so many things and try different things, which is what's so exciting.
And in terms of like tools that you use, what are I know you work with the Runway and talked about that much, but you mentioned it. Like, what other tools do you really spend time with that you think are exciting, and what is it on the horizon that you look forward to in terms of technology?
I use Runway. I'm using some of the Chinese ones like Kling and Minimax. Luma AI, I love. They're great as well. Great people. It's different because on my full-time job, I vet a lot of these tools for enterprise environments. So I don't get to play around with the open source as much. But there's some phenomenal things there where you can make your own path and choose what type of workflow you want to create. They're just not in the place where they're ready to be in an enterprise environment. So I don't do a lot with those. But I look to open source tools and some of the newer companies, the startup companies, to see like what is on that creative possible, right? Like what is these are the directions we can go, right? So you can assume the new model comes up with a certain thing, we'll call it like the squishy face or the cake model that Pika has. Okay, that's possible, but what is that going to end up being? Is that going to be just like a plugin? Is that going to be like a just a unique feature? And I think that we're going to get a lot of these things that you can go, okay, well, I need an explosion, so I'm going to bring this one in. I don't think visually we're going to be able to mix models that way, but shot by shot you're going to be able to do that, I think. I think that there's a big call for pulling a lot of tools in via API to create some sort of dashboard or things like that. I don't know if that, I think a lot of people are trying to do, something like that. So I think that's needed, but, not necessarily the most needed tool. I think control within especially with video, character consistency, which we're getting so close. Kling just came up with their internal, like it'll maintain the same character. Product consistency for product shots or objects. And I know that these things are on the table. So it's really interesting to just be like, oh, it's not there yet, but I know that they'll get there or get to a form of this very, very soon. And to try to plan for that, it makes creating a project difficult if you have to start one without using those, especially if it's a bigger project. But I also have hope for the Adobes of the world, the Firefly. They get a bad rap sometimes, just because it's trained on stock footage. People say it looks like stock footage, but I've got some really good outputs from Firefly as well. And I think that they'll continue to grow, but they're just doing so in a slower, corporate pace, which isn't as sexy as being able to show the new Flux model, as soon as it's ready. So I just have high hope for the space overall. On the audio side, I think that what you guys are doing, what 11 Labs is doing, is interesting, and I think that those tools are going to be. I use them hand in hand, right, for everything that I'm doing when I'm making films. But I think that they're going to be more instrumental, and that those capabilities are going to just be. I know that there's things out there on that side, because I'm not as much as an audio guy, that are just beyond my comprehension of what I need. But if you could create something that does a full sound design for me, please send it my way. That's the thing that I need to always outsource, or I'm working on my skill set. So
all right. Yeah.
There. But I think that there's going to be so many little tools that come up, and it's just going to be like it was in the past. Do you need this piece of software? Do you not? And cutting through the thousands and thousands of companies that are out there and tools, and I think you start to see like what features are prevalent in each one. And obviously ChatGPT I use every single day for many different things, and that's like how my brain works, is working in those kind of robotic steps, for lack of a better term.
I'm going to let you go very, very shortly, Gabe. Thank you so much for coming on. But I want to go full circle, because I want to land there. You now have AI in your title. You're the vice president over at Edelman. What is the big, you've been there for almost a year, right?
About 7 or 8 months, yeah.
What has been the biggest change in working in the enterprise space?
I wouldn't say there's a change in working in the enterprise space, because I work with brands for my entire career. But I think with AI, I think cutting through like what is the most important aspect of what like a tool actually does. Like I think we say that there's no magic button, right? I think a lot of people think AI is this magic button, but it's a lot of magic buttons working together. People call them tools, and it's figuring out like what that is, and a lot of education. Because the space and the terms are so big within the space that knowing, having an expert that knows how to use the tools is great, but also like how can these tools allow you to do more, and how do you change the way that you look at a project? How do you look at like a production and get more out of it, as opposed to expecting it to be done in an instant. So I think that's the one of the biggest things that I've had to vocalize or evangelize.
Amazing. All right, I'm gonna let you go, Gabe. But let's end with this. Some personal favorites. You're a kid of the '80s and the '90s. What's on your playlist? What's a book that you get inspired by? Give us something that isn't in the film space that we should all look up and run to dive into.
Okay, something not in the film space. I mean, like I said, kid of the '80s, Ninja Turtles for me was everything. I love the Terminator movies in the '90s. I'm that generation, right, of people. As I come to adult, I read. I think one of my favorite modern books is The Alchemist, and then I read a lot of Stoicism books, so Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. That just keeps me aligned and centered. I've read all the creative books that there could be. Those don't inspire me as much as which is really hard to say, as some of these management books and things like that, and even like more technical books, because I'm a person that says, okay, this is great that people do it this way, but what is possible, and like what is that creative possible? What is that adjacent thing? And that's what I look for, as well as trying to just maintain and be a decent person.
Those are solid advice to carry with. I have a stack of like management books and business books.
Oh yeah.
But I think what inspires me more is like I'd rather read fiction.
I'm like looking at my desk over here. I'm not going to pan to it because it's I would be appalled to have it be somewhere. But I got 4 or 5 that I'm reading through right now.
To be fair, I think it's fair criticism, because some of them could be just a tweet thread, to be honest.
Totally. This one right here is Ray Kurzweil.
Great.
The singularity is nearer when you add AI. That's the current one that's on my top of my playlist.
I listened to that on my Audible now, actually. Yeah, I'm in the midst of that. I was a huge fan of his Singularity is in the Air, the first one.
Yeah.
That really got me into, I guess, a bit of the doom and gloom about future AI.
Yeah.
That feels also so long ago. That was probably, I picked that up 12 years or so ago. And then,
He called it.
He called it.
Yeah.
Look at where we are. Also, the documentary about him is fantastic with the same title.
Oh, I need to watch the doc. I haven't watched it.
He sits and he has a whole bag of like 200 pills he eats each day to stay alive forever.
Yeah.
And so
he really wants to live forever.
Yeah. But it's also like a fascinating backstory. I mean, that's a film adaptation in the making. Maybe you should jump into that one.
Definitely. That's a good story to be told with AI.
Yeah, exactly. It would be perfect to come full circle with him uploaded to the cloud. Gabe, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you for coming to Makes You Wonder. And where do we follow you? Where do we find you?
I do things on YouTube. Most of my social is at Gabe Michael _AI, or you can find me on LinkedIn at Gabe Michael, and then on my website at gabemichael.ai.
Beautiful. All covered. Amazing. Yeah, we're going to have AI Anna read us out. And thank you so much for coming, Gabe. Looking forward to following you on your journey. And speak to you soon.
Speak to you soon.
All right. Ciao.
Thank you for watching and listening to Makes You Wonder. If you enjoyed this episode, do us a solid and hit that subscribe button on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts. For extra karma, please share with your mom and your friends too. Makes You Wonder is made with love by Wondercraft, the AI audio studio for brands and creative teams. It's hosted by Oskar Sarander. You can find Oskar on LinkedIn, X, and Threads. Links in show notes. This episode was produced by Alex Hughes Morgan. It was edited by Zaina. A nice young man named Dimitri from Wondercraft was the executive producer. Learn more about Wondercraft at wondercraft.ai.